Hi everyone, DisturbedShadow here to continue on with my review of the Disturbed discography. Today we'll be taking a look at their last album before the new one that's about to be released, which is entitled Asylum, which came out back in 2010, which was a couple years before they went on hiatus. So anyway, let's just jump right in and discuss this album. So let's just dive into the tracks first. Like always, we'll start off with the first track, which is the short instrumental intro track entitled Remnants, which is sort of the intro track for the title track, which is the second track, Asylum, where it's sort of a very long song if you put the two together, but they sort of separated this intro out as an optional listening piece, which I think it's sort of not as good if you just listen to the track on its own. But if you listen to it right in a row with Asylum, it makes a very epic track. So it's sort of a song that I would really only listen to if you're going to listen to Asylum right after it, because it sort of doesn't make as much sense on its own. Although a lot of albums do this now, where they have this intro track which sort of feeds into their first track, the first real track on the album. And this is one of the ones that sort of does a better job of standing on its own than some of those other ones, which are hardly even worth listening to at all unless they're with the uh, original track. Like exactly like I was talking about on my review of the new Bullet from a Valentine album the other day, where that opening track sort of doesn't do anything at all when it's by itself. So Remnants is a song that does a really good job of setting up this album, I think, where comes in with sort of sound effects, and then acoustic guitar comes in, and then bass and drums, and then the electric guitars come in, sort of really cool progression before it feeds into Asylum, which is the track we're going to talk about right now, which is my personal favorite track of this album. It's one of my favorite Disturbed songs of all time. It just has such a great feel to it. It just comes in swinging with these heavy drummings, just such heavy drumming, and this really heavy, crunchy riff, and then David's just like shouting "Release me" at the beginning of it, right as it feeds in from Remnants. It just has a great feel to it, and I love the lead guitar bit in the beginning of the song that sort of appears periodically throughout the song. It just has a really great sound to it, and I just love the effects on it. It just adds an extra edge to the song. The one complaint I do have is that replicating it live is not as easy because they only have the one guitarist. So, sort of when they released this, I almost thought maybe they should have like a touring guitarist tour with them to help make some of these songs that incorporate this dual guitar stuff to give it a better sound live, but it is whatever. Anyway, like I said, a really solid track and a great way to start off this album. It's just such an amazing song. Track number 3, The Infection, which just comes in swinging with this really heavy riff. And what really stands out about this song is the guitar solo on it. It's just a very classic Dan Donegan solo with all this wah thrown on it, and just really great progression. It's nothing too crazy, but like I said, with a lot of the solos on Indestructible, it just really fits in right with the song and just gives that song that extra edge. It just makes it that much better. It's just a really super solid track. What I like about the end and the final chorus, they bring in a bunch of layered backing vocals to just give it an extra little oomph at the end of the song, and I think they execute it really well. Track number 4, Warrior, which is one of the more aggressive songs on it, which sort of brings up David's classic sort of rhythmic vocal style, where he's sort of barking out these words in sort of staccato bursts, and it works really well. It's just a really aggressive song, and then much more melodic in the choruses, and just has a great overall feel to it, and very aggressive drumming, and just everything about this track is very aggressive, and it works really well. Track number 5, Another Way to Die, which is, I believe, the first song they released off this album back in 2010, when they're still promoting the album before it actually released, which has sort of interesting progression to it, where it starts off sort of slow and melodic in the opening, and then it gets really heavy and crunchy on the guitars, and then sort of classic David Draiman sort of aggressive staccato sort of vocal delivery, and then then in the middle of the song it sort of pulls back to the opening sort of clean melodic guitar bit, where it sort of slows down a bit, and the very interesting solos put in there, sort of slow and melodic, which sort of juxtaposed to the more aggressive verses and choruses of the song, and then they jump back into the chorus again to end it. It's sort of an interesting progression, and the bass sort of takes the forefront in the song a bit on the more pulled back guitar moments, and then you can really hear what the bass is doing. So it's a little moment for John Moyer to shine a little bit. And just on the drums, it's sort of interesting how it sort of alternates between the more aggressive drumming and then the more simplistic drumming on the more pulled back moments. So it's just got an interesting progression to it. Track number 6, Never Again, which is a very aggressive song. It's one of the heavier tracks on the album. And it's sort of about the Holocaust, sort of Draiman paying tribute to his Jewish ancestry. So it's sort of about how the Nazis sort of persecuted the Jews and how he'll never let it happen again, basically. And I just really love everything about the song. It's got this really aggressive opening guitar riff, and then it pulls back to a more technical sort of guitar bit, and then Mike Wengren comes in really heavy with the drums. He's all over the kit with this, doing crazy stuff, fast-paced stuff, more simplistic stuff, and very technical all throughout the whole song. It's just really solid stuff happening there. And then David Draiman's vocals are just spectacular on this track, whether they're just like very fast-paced, aggressive singing in the verses and the soaring melodic vocals in the chorus, sort of alternating between those two styles, just has a lot of emotion and a lot of power behind his voice in this track. So it's a very amazing song. Track number 7, The Animal, is just a really great song. It comes in, sort of starts off with this heavy bass bit, and then the guitars come in with this very interesting sounding melodic guitar bit that sort of has a lot of effects on it. It just sounds really cool. It's just a really great throughout the whole song. Just a lot of melodic vocals from David, and then what I really like about this track is the guitar work. It's just so many moments where Dan Donegan throws in these really cool melodic guitar moments, and then the more heavy, aggressive sort of rhythm stuff. And it just alternates between those two styles and just has a great feel to it, and I really enjoy that on this track. Track number 8, Crucified, which is a more slowed down song. And the guitar playing and the drumming and the verses is pretty technical for a Disturbed song. And then it gets very more melodic in the chorus, where David's vocals really soar above everything else. And there's some great melodic lead playing from Dan Donegan in there to just give it that nice melodic edge to it. It's just a really super solid track. And another track like The Infection, where at the end they sort of bring in a bunch of backing vocals layering in to the final chorus to just give it that extra oomph at the end of the song. It's just really solid. Track number 9, Serpentine, is another one that's really good on the melodic side of things. A solid melodic guitar intro, and then the bass really stands out on this track, where John Moyer sort of gets to be a little bit more on the forefront on this track, where the guitar sort of takes a backseat and you can really hear what he's doing on the bass, and a lot of interesting stuff there. And then there's a lot of moments where the bass and the guitars pair up really nicely together and give it that really amazing sound. And then like a lot of the other tracks on this album, David Draiman's melodic vocal delivery is just spot on this track, and a really great performance from him here. Track number 10, My Child, which is sort of an interesting track. Sort of tells the story of a man who sort of unexpectedly was going to become a father, and then sort of wasn't sure he was going to be able to be worthy of this, and then sort of trying to change his life to fit in with the role of being a father. And then I believe this isn't actually a true story per se. It's not about his life exactly, but sort of the story he's trying to tell on this track is that the child dies, and then it sort of devastates this man, and then he sort of wants to trade his soul basically trade his own life for this child to survive. But anyway, sort of an interesting story being told. It's kind of a dark song. A lot of the other tracks on this album, sort of has a very dark lyrical theme, and then musically it also reflects that darkness. It's very aggressive throughout the whole track. There's a lot of heavy drumming, a lot of technical type of drumming stuff, a lot of aggressive guitar playing, and just really heavy in your face, and just a really great performance overall. Track number 11, Sacrifice, which has this really meaty, heavy guitar riff that open up the song. It's just present throughout all the verses, just this really crunchy sound to it. And then a very sing-along chorus in this track is sort of lots of layered backing vocals in with the David Draiman's main lead vocal performance there. And just really catchy chorus that makes you want to sing along with it. It's just a really enjoyable track overall. And finally, track number 12, Innocence, which is a very aggressive track throughout the whole song, sort of talking about displeasure with the current legal system, and how a lot of people who are really guilty get to walk off innocent for one reason or another. It's just a very aggressive track overall. It comes in really heavy with the rhythm guitars here, and then lots of heavy double bassing from Mike Wengren here, and then they layer in a lot of melodic guitar bits over that with a lot of effects on them, and that's present throughout the entire song. Just lots of fantastic melodic lead playing laced into the heavy, aggressive rhythm playing. It's just really great feeling on the guitars. Just a really heavy track to end the album with. But technically, it's not the last track because we do have the very interesting choice of a hidden track, which, before we talk about the track itself, I really enjoy the way they did the hidden track on this, where typically a hidden track is like on the last track on the album, there'll be like, I don't know, like 5-10 minutes of silence, and then the next track will come on as part of that track, which is kind of annoying if you want to listen to just one of the two songs. Whereas on this one, they actually made its individual track, which just has 1.5 minutes of silence at the beginning, which you can just chop off if you really want to edit it out, or a lot of like programs like iTunes will let you just start the song in the middle of it. So I just have the song start 1.5 minutes in. But anyway, on to the song itself, which is an interesting choice of a cover from the band U2 with the song I Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For, which is sort of an interesting track, and you would think maybe they would do a good job with it, especially since they've done a good job of covering stuff outside their comfort zone with, or stuff that you wouldn't think would translate well to a metal song, with on The Sickness when they covered Shout by Tears for Fears, or on 10,000 Fists when they covered Land of Confusion by Genesis. But I think they sort of didn't execute this as good as they could have. It just felt a little awkward in a lot of places, especially in the transition from the second chorus to the guitar solo. It's a very abrupt jump, and it's very aggressive, and it feels kind of out of place, which is kind of sucks because the solo is actually really good if it was in a different song, but it feels awkwardly placed in this song. And then some of the other instrumental work feels a little off for what the song is originally. But on the plus side, David Draiman's vocal delivery on the song is just amazing. It's a really good job of making it his own and just giving it his very melodic approach to it. And so there are some parts of this cover that work well and some of them that don't. And that's okay because the rest of this album is just really solid, and that's the one sort of track that I'm a little bit on the fence about, but everything else on this album is super solid. Anyway, let's go in and talk about the band members themselves. So we'll start off with David Draiman on the vocals. Like I've been saying throughout this album does a really good job of showcasing his more melodic style of singing. On songs like Infection and Never Again and The Animal and Serpentine and Sacrifice as well, where it sort of really puts the spot on his melodic type of singing. And he does a really great job of that. And there's really lots of great soaring melodies throughout this. There are also a lot of moments where it does show off his more aggressive style of singing, like on My Child and Warrior, where you sort of get that very aggressive staccato sort of singing pattern that he is known for. And it's just a really, really great mix of vocal performances on this track. And like I said, on the cover of U2, his vocal performance is probably the best part of that track. So, like I said, this guy's doing an amazing job on vocals, like I keep saying throughout my reviews of their albums. Anyway, moving on, Dan Donegan on guitars. I think this is some of his best guitar work with the band. There's just so many great moments where he's doing all this great, aggressive, memorable rhythm riffs, or all these spectacular lead bits, especially on tracks like Innocence and Asylum, where it really shows off that he can do this more melodic style of guitar playing instead of his normal sort of crunchy, heavy guitar riffs, which are still present throughout the whole album, like on Asylum and Warrior and Another Way to Die, with these really memorable and just really awesome, meaty guitar riffs. So he's doing a great job of various guitar styles on this album. John Moyer on bass. There are a few moments on this album where the bass really stands out, especially on the track Serpentine. And there's a moment on My Child in the middle where the bass really stands out as well. It's following along with what Dan Donegan is doing on the lead guitar playing, but it just has this really awesome sound to it. And those two tracks in particular really showcase the bass playing. That he's doing all this really cool stuff that is frequently doing something different from what the guitars are doing. but when it is doing something similar to what the guitars are doing, it just blends in really nicely, especially on the tracks My Child and Asylum, where the bass really blends in really well with the guitars and just gives the extra edge and the heaviness to it. Mike Wengren on the drums. There's a lot of great drumming moments throughout this album, especially on the tracks The Animal, Never Again especially. There's lots of crazy drumming stuff in there. And even Sacrifice, where he alternates between the more heavy stuff and the more pulled back, simplistic stuff. So he's got a very good range of drumming. And then the track Innocence with heavy double bassing. So he's covering all his bases on drums. So he's doing a great job keeping time for this band, like I keep saying. There's nothing too crazy or complex, but there are a few moments where it's a lot more technical than what you normally expect from a Disturbed song. So I have to give him props for doing some more technical, crazy stuff on this album, as well as his more simplistic type of drumming. So overall, really great stuff on the drums. And these four guys, again, do a spectacular job making it an awesome album. So my final closing thoughts are, this album is sort of not as well received, I think, but I personally think it's one of their better albums. It's just really solid all the way through. Great songwriting and just great chemistry between these guys to produce a very solid album. So my personal recommendation is this is a very good album to get into the more modern sound of Disturbed, the sort of a more mainstreamy hard rock heavy metal band. But it's still very true to the roots, and there are a lot of moments where they got on the more aggressive side, like stuff you would have expected off of The Sickness. So there's a great mix of stuff here, and it's a great first introduction to Disturbed. And if you're already a fan of the band and haven't checked it out, I would definitely recommend checking this album out as well. And now, coming off of my review of all of their albums, I'm very much looking forward to seeing what they do with the new album, Immortalized, which I've listened to a few of the tracks they released beforehand already, and I think they're pretty good. And I know they just put out the full album for streaming, but I'm personally waiting till the release date to review it so I can get a few times to listen to those. I haven't listened to them yet because I've been waiting to listen to the whole thing after I finish this discography review. But now that I've concluded that, I'm going to go listen to their new album right now and then expect my review very soon for that to conclude this discography. So be sure to give this video a like if you enjoyed it, and if you want to see more of our reviews, be sure to subscribe. Until then, I'll see you in the next video.